For the past few months, many DJI fans believed they had finally found the perfect solution. If DJI couldn't officially sell the Pocket 4P in the United States, another company would simply sell what looked like the exact same camera under a different name. Problem solved, right? Well, maybe not. Because this week, the FCC took action against Xtra, the company behind the upcoming Muse 2 Pro, and suddenly everyone is asking the same question. Was Xtra ever a real alternative? Or was this loophole always destined to fail? And honestly, I think this story is much bigger than just one camera. Let's get one thing straight before we go any further, because there's been a lot of misinformation floating around online. The FCC did not fine Xtra because it proved the company was illegally selling DJI products. That's not what happened. According to the FCC, the fines were issued because Xtra and several other companies allegedly failed to respond to formal requests for information. Those are two very different things. At this point, the investigation is still unfolding. But here's where things become interesting. If the FCC eventually concludes that Xtra is simply acting as a proxy for DJI, then the same problems that prevented the Pocket 4P from officially launching in the US could potentially apply to the Muse 2 Pro as well. Now here's the question I want to ask all of you. Was anyone actually surprised? Because if we're being honest, the similarities between Xtra's products and DJI's lineup were impossible to ignore. The Muse looked remarkably similar to the Pocket 3. The Edge mirrored the Osmo Action series. And now the Muse 2 Pro arrives with almost the exact same specifications everyone was expecting from the Pocket 4P. Same 1-inch sensor, same telephoto lens, same gimbal, same professional video features. It didn't take long for people to connect the dots. So was this always going to attract regulatory attention? Or do you think the FCC was already looking for companies like Xtra from the very beginning? What's even more fascinating is that Xtra wasn't simply copying DJI. In some ways, they actually appeared to improve the design. A flip screen instead of a rotating one. A built-in tripod mount instead of making you buy an accessory. The charging port moved to the side so you could power the camera while it's mounted. An integrated grip. These are changes many creators had actually been asking DJI to make. So here's another question. If the Muse 2 Pro really had launched exactly as advertised, and it genuinely offered a better user experience than the Pocket 4P, would you have bought the Xtra version instead of the DJI version? Or does the brand still matter to you? This also raises a bigger issue that goes far beyond cameras. If companies are allowed to take existing technology, put a different logo on it, make a few hardware tweaks, and sell it as something new, where do we draw the line? Some people argue that's just normal business. We see rebranding happen across countless industries. Others believe that if the underlying technology is effectively the same, regulators should treat it exactly the same way, regardless of the logo on the front. I'm genuinely curious where you stand on that, because I can honestly see arguments on both sides. And then there's Skyrover. For drone enthusiasts, this news is arguably even bigger. Skyrover, another company widely associated with DJI hardware, is also facing FCC action. That tells me this isn't just about one camera or one manufacturer anymore. It looks like regulators are trying to understand whether multiple companies are being used to keep DJI products flowing into the US under different names. Whether that's actually what's happening remains to be seen, but it's clear the FCC isn't just looking at DJI anymore. It's looking at the entire ecosystem around it. Now, one argument I've seen all over social media is that this is purely political. Others argue it's entirely about national security. The truth is, most of us don't have access to all the information regulators are working with. What we do know is that these decisions have very real consequences for consumers. If you're someone in the US who simply wants to buy a pocket camera for travel or content creation, you probably don't care about the legal complexities behind the scenes. You just want to know if you'll actually be able to buy the product. That's why this story has attracted so much attention. It's no longer just about DJI as a company, it's about consumer choice. Another thing I've noticed is that some people believe Xtra was the perfect backup plan for DJI. But was it really sustainable? Think about it. If everyone on YouTube immediately starts calling the Muse 2 Pro the DJI Pocket 4P under another name, doesn't that completely defeat the purpose? The more attention these products received, the harder they became to ignore. So here's another question for you. Do you think all the publicity actually hurt Xtra? If people had quietly bought these products without making a big deal about them, would regulators have paid the same level of attention? Or was scrutiny inevitable no matter what happened? There's also the practical side of this discussion. Plenty of people are now saying they'll simply buy the Pocket 4P overseas and bring it back with them. Others are planning to wait and see what happens with Xtra. Some have already decided they'll just buy a different camera altogether. It really highlights how uncertain the situation has become. A few months ago, most people thought there was an easy answer. Today, nobody seems completely sure what the best option is. For me, the biggest takeaway isn't whether Xtra ultimately wins or loses. It's what this means for the future. If companies like Xtra and Skyrover become subject to the same level of scrutiny as DJI itself, does that effectively close the door on this entire strategy? Or will we simply see new companies emerge with slightly different approaches? History tells us that markets almost always find another way, but regulators also tend to adapt over time. It almost becomes a game of cat and mouse. So I want to finish with a question because I think this is where the real discussion begins. Imagine you're living in the US today, and you have enough money set aside for a Pocket 4P. What would you do? Would you still pre-order the Xtra Muse 2 Pro and hope everything works out? Would you travel overseas and buy the original DJI version instead? Or would you simply move on and buy something completely different? There isn't a right or wrong answer here, and I think that's what makes this story so interesting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments because, judging by everything that's happened over the past few weeks, this conversation is only just getting started.